Story 5, The Visitor, in the Cornfield, August, in Iowa. The corn stood tall in endless rows, stretching to every horizon under a gray sky that promised storms. Marcus Webb had been farming this land for 37 years, inheriting it from his father, who had inherited it from his father before him. 3 generations of Webbs working the same earth, watching the same skies, living lives of quiet routine and predictable seasons. Marcus was out checking irrigation lines that evening, something he did regularly, though it probably wasn't necessary. The truth was, he liked being out in the fields. The isolation suited him, the distance from the house, from the television news that his wife Rachel insisted on watching, from the whole complicated world beyond his fence lines. Out here, surrounded by corn and sky, life made sense. The sun was setting, painting the clouds orange and purple, when Marcus first noticed something odd. The corn in one section of the field was moving, but not in the way corn should move. Wind made corn sway in waves all in the same direction. This movement was circular, a rotation, as if something was moving through the stalks in a spiral pattern. Marcus stopped walking and watched. His practical farmer's mind ran through possibilities. Animal, maybe a deer or a bear, though bears were rare this far south. But the movement didn't match any animal he knew. It was too regular, too purposeful, following too perfect a spiral from the outside toward some center point he couldn't see from his current position. He hesitated. Part of him wanted to go back to the house, to tell Rachel, to call the county sheriff maybe. But another part of him, the part that had spent his whole life solving problems on his own, fixing machinery and dealing with crop disease and handling weather emergencies, wanted to see what was happening. It was probably nothing. Probably. Marcus walked toward the disturbance, following the rows between stalks, his boots crunching on the dry earth. The movement in the corn continued, always ahead of him, always spiraling inward. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the air had that heavy electric quality that comes before a storm. As he got closer, Marcus noticed something else. The air was warm here, warmer than it should be. Not the humid warmth of an Iowa summer evening, but a dry heat, like standing too close to a fire. And there was a smell, sharp and acrid, like burning metal or something chemical. He pushed through the last row of corn and stopped dead. In the center of the spiral was a clearing. The corn had been pressed flat, bent at impossible angles, creating a perfect circle about 40 feet across. And in the center of that circle stood something that Marcus's brain couldn't quite process at first. It was roughly humanoid, 2 legs, 2 arms, a head, but wrong in every detail. Too tall, perhaps 7 feet, with limbs that were too thin and jointed in too many places. The skin, if it was skin, was gray-blue and seemed to shimmer in the fading light. The head was large, elongated, with eyes that reflected the setting sun like mirrors. Marcus and the being stared at each other across the flattened corn. Time seemed to stretch, each second lasting forever. Marcus felt his heart hammering in his chest, his breath coming in short gasps. His legs wanted to run, but he found himself frozen, unable to move. The being raised one arm, a slow, deliberate gesture. Its hand had too many fingers, each one ending in what might have been a claw or a tool or something else. It pointed at Marcus, then at the sky, then at the ground. The gesture seemed meaningful, like it was trying to communicate something, but Marcus couldn't understand what. Then the being spoke, or rather, sound came from it, not from a mouth, because Marcus couldn't see a mouth, but from somewhere in its torso. The sound was like a voice run through water, distorted and strange, forming syllables that almost seemed like words, but in no language Marcus had ever heard. Marcus found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "What do you want?" The being tilted its head at an angle that would have broken a human neck. The gesture somehow conveyed curiosity, or perhaps confusion. It made the sound again, different this time, modulating in pitch and rhythm as if it was trying to adjust to something Marcus might understand. Then it reached down to the crushed corn at its feet and began to draw in the dirt. Marcus watched, mesmerized, as the being traced out symbols, geometric shapes, interconnected lines, patterns that hurt to look at because they seemed to suggest dimensions that shouldn't exist. Marcus recognized nothing. These weren't letters or numbers or any kind of writing he knew. But as he stared at the patterns, something strange happened. Ideas began to form in his mind, concepts without words, images of vast distances, of travel between stars, of worlds so different from Earth that they couldn't even be imagined properly. And underneath it all, a sense of urgency, of need, of something desperately important that needed to be communicated. The being finished its drawing and looked up at Marcus again. Those mirror-like eyes seemed to bore into him, searching for understanding, for connection. And Marcus realized with a shock that went through him like electricity that this thing was afraid. He could sense it somehow, beneath the alienness, beneath the impossible nature of what he was seeing. Fear. "You're lost," Marcus said softly. "Aren't you?" The being went very still. Then it nodded, an oddly human gesture that seemed out of place on that alien form. It pointed at the sky again, then made a sweeping gesture that encompassed the horizon, the fields, the whole world. Then it placed one hand over where its heart might be, if it had a heart, and made a sound that was unmistakably distress. Marcus felt something shift inside him. His fear didn't disappear, but it was joined by something else: empathy, pity, a recognition of suffering that transcended species. This being, whatever it was, wherever it had come from, was alone and frightened, just as Marcus would be if he found himself stranded on some alien world. "I don't know how to help you," Marcus said. "I don't understand what you need." The being seemed to slump slightly, as if Marcus's incomprehension had confirmed something it had feared. It looked down at its drawings in the dirt, then slowly, deliberately, began to erase them with one long-fingered hand, smoothing the earth until no trace remained. Thunder crashed, much closer now. The first drops of rain began to fall, fat and heavy. The being looked up at the sky, then back at Marcus. It raised one hand, a gesture that might have been farewell or gratitude or apology or all of those things together. Then it began to change. The shimmer of its skin intensified, became a glow, became light. Marcus had to shield his eyes as the being seemed to dissolve or transform or ascend. He couldn't tell which. The light grew brighter and brighter until Marcus was forced to turn away, and when he looked back seconds later, the being was gone. The rain fell harder now, soaking into the crushed corn, into the smooth patch of earth where impossible symbols had briefly existed. Marcus stood alone in the circle, rain running down his face, his clothes plastered to his body, staring at the spot where the being had stood. He never told anyone about what he'd seen. Who would believe him? He barely believed it himself. But sometimes, late at night, he would go out to that spot in the cornfield. The corn had grown back, but the ground remained slightly different there, as if marked by some event that defied agricultural explanation. Marcus would stand in that place and look up at the stars and wonder, where had the being come from? Where had it gone? Were there others? And most importantly, what had it been trying to communicate in those frantic moments before the rain washed away its message? He thought about that sense of fear he'd felt from it, that desperation. It had been so human in its distress, and yet so utterly alien in every other way. The encounter had changed something in Marcus, had cracked open his view of the universe in a way that could never be repaired. The world seemed bigger now, and lonelier. If beings could cross the vast distances between stars only to find themselves lost and unable to communicate, what did that say about the nature of the cosmos? What did it say about our place in it? Marcus grew old, but he never stopped visiting that spot in his cornfield, and he never stopped looking at the sky, hoping and fearing in equal measure that he might see something that would help him understand. But the sky kept its secrets, and Marcus kept his, and the years passed with the quiet inevitability of seasons changing.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like and subscribe for more. We'll see you next time.